Well, good afternoon, friends. Uh, what we're going to do today is I'm going to do a neck reset on a classical guitar. Now, if you know anything about classical guitars, you know that they do not have a dovetail joint. The neck is integral into the neck block. So it's all one piece. This, and then the block inside is all one piece. So, you can't do the traditional neck reset that you would do on a acoustic guitar because there's no way to steam this out. You'd take the entire guitar apart. So I tried to figure out how I was going to do that because this is a this is an old Yamaha. It's a G60A Nippon Gaiki Limited, and it's probably from the 60s, made in Japan, and it's a fantastic sounding guitar. When I got it originally off eBay, the bridge was coming up and there was a bit of a belly. So I did a couple of things. I put a bridge plate underneath here to flatten out the belly. Now, classical guitars don't normally have a bridge plate, but I put a bridge plate in to try to flatten this out, and then I put the bridge back down. And so the bridge is in really nice. It's in solid. I played it, and it is fantastic. Very light wood all the way around. It's hard to hear, but it has a beautiful ring to it. And the problem was that the strings are too high because the neck has come up over the 50, 60 years that it's been around. So I said, okay, I can either throw it away, kind of put it in a corner, make it in wall art, or I can figure out how to fix it. Looked on YouTube and saw that there was a guy who decided to fix his his acoustic by doing what he called a cheap neck reset. And that instead of pulling the neck all the way out and resetting the dovetail and doing all the things that I would normally do, he just took the guitar, turned it over, and cut the back off to the fretboard, leaving a gap. He then clamped it down tight, which pulled the neck back, and essentially created a neck reset, although maybe in that particular case not the prettiest. He did a nice job though, fixing it up. I mean, at the end of the day, you really couldn't tell he'd done anything like that. And he could have performed a standard neck reset, just decided he didn't want to do that. So in this case, we can't. So what we're going to do is what this gentleman did, is that I'm going to cut the back of the neck, and I'm going to try to cut it into just a tiniest bit of a wedge, so that when I pull this back, it will be just right. Now, how do I know what to do? I'm going to use the standard formula that one uses when they're doing a neck reset. And that is, I'm going to measure the distance from the 12th fret, which is right where the neck comes up, to the saddle. I'm going to measure the height from here to here, so the height of the guitar. I determined already how much I want to lower the strings. And then the formula that I use is that I take the difference between what it is currently and what I want it to be, double that, multiply it times this number here, and then divide that by this length. And so what I had was, I had 12.825. I have an old cheat sheet here, but I did 12.82587. Let's see, what was that? Yeah, 12.875. This length. The depth of the body was 3.75. It was already at 10/64, and I wanted it to be 6/64. which is a touch on the low end for a classical guitar, but that's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to lower it by 4/64 or 1/16. And so to do that, then I got to double that number, which would be 1/8, which is what, so I took the 1/8 times the 3.75 divided by the 12.825, and of course I took 1/8 and turned that into a decimal. And then essentially at the end of the day, the number I came up with, I rounded to 0.03 inches. So 3/100ths of an inch. And then go to 0 at the fretboard. So I'm going to start with 0.03 here, and I want to go to 0 here. Now, a couple things I did is, one is I put some tape on each side so as I run the saw down, I won't scratch that up. And then I had to pick the saw that I was going to use. My first choice was to use a miter saw, which I have here, this back saw. But the problem with the back saw was that it's a little bit too thick. This one is 0.05, and I don't like that. That's not going to work for me. Now double check that. Yeah, and the heck what this thing is being left-handed. Yes, this is 0.05, too thick. So I had this little saw here, which it's called a Zona. It's a fine kerf razor saw. Noza, I guess it's Zona, or is it Noza? I don't know which it is. Doesn't matter. It's a fine kerf razor saw. So if I use this one, then the cut would be a little narrow, if I'm not mistaken. And this one is very fine, and it cuts about half, about 0.16 instead of 0.03. So that's a little narrow. I went up to Home Depot and I picked up this saw, which is a DeWalt flush cut pull saw, and with 23 teeth, so it's a fine cut. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to take this off here and just leave one piece, just like that, so that when I pushes against this tape, it should be just about where I want it to be. So when you come through, I actually made a little mark here, but so if I come through, then I should be coming right down. I had a little wood block that I am going to continue to use here. So what I did is just give me a little height. I put this right up against where I want everything to be. I'm just going to hold it just right there. And then this is going to come through here. Now, what I realized was why I moved the tape around is there's a little adjusting screw here. So before I get too far along, I'm going to take the tape off this side, and I'm going to move it over to the other side. And let's just move it right on over here, and we're put it right there. That should just be right where I want it to be. Okay. So what we did is I had to move it over so that it will be in the right spot. And I am going to put just one more right there. Okay. Now, I'm going to try this one more time. See, I gotta get it out here a little bit and get my angle down. And I can always fill it. Here we go, very nice. And once I get a little bit of a cut, you know, I will be happy to move in. And this is not going to go quickly because it's a very fine line. But we are sawing the neck off. And I just want to look. Yep, I'm pushing right up against the tape. That's okay. That's not bad then. That's okay. You might ask, well, why don't you clamp it down? And realistically, I don't have a spot that'll work. And I'm okay with this. It's a very flexible knife. Incredibly sharp. And yes, this is going, it's tearing the tape, but it's not doing a bad job of, so now what I can also see is that I am pushing in just a little bit. I'll give a little more oomph to get this out just a touch. Because I think, there it goes. I'm crowding the tape on the side closest to me. I'm going to speed up the video and turn off the original audio because it'll just be, you know, garbled. And going to do a little overview of what took place while I was sawing this neck off. And it was working very well. But what I started to notice was that the teeth were digging into the side of the guitar, in the side that's exposed in the picture. You can't really see it because I didn't get a good close-up, but it was starting to move in, and you know that was going to make a mess. And I used my thumb to kind of push that out. There was some success with it, not a tremendous amount initially. And so, you know, I just kept trying to work and figure out how I was going to get it done where I could saw the neck without having to essentially do a major repair to the sides. I used that plastic scale, hoping it would be a bit of a guard. It would have worked, but it was cumbersome and it was a little too thick. So I couldn't really get it to do what I wanted it to do. So then I went to a smaller piece of paper, got it slid in, and that worked. But again, it was cumbersome and was not really going to help me in the way that I wanted it to. So looking around, I started thinking about how I was going to make that happen, and came upon the idea of maybe scoring the sides right at that joint. First, I did some tape repair, got it in a little closer. Did the fix on both sides. Took off the pieces that were already a bit torn, because then again, all they were going to do is continue to tear. And went back to work. The saw is designed to pull, and that's how it cuts. Now you'll notice at times I was pushing and pulling, and it does work that way, but it was designed to be a pull saw, as it called it. And this is where I started working down the sides, right at that joint. And that was kind of very clean cut. You'll see I'll continue to do that throughout the cutting process. Because as I noted, my goal is to get the neck cut, but not to create more work in repairing the sides. Now that neck the wood on that is not very hard. It was a reasonably soft wood, and that saw is new and it's very sharp. So the saw in action worked pretty well. I'd work one side, then I'd work the other side to where I got a groove, and then I would go back to the top and saw down. And you may or may not have been able to pick up on what I did initially, is that I put tape on the saw to increase its thickness, because it was just not quite as wide a cut as I would have liked at the top. You know, the miter saw was too wide. The other saw that I have was only half wide enough. This one that I'm using was closest to being what I needed, but from the start, I needed to thicken it up. And as I get down about halfway, I'll take that tape off, because remember, I want to create a bit of a wedge, so that at the heel, the opening is wider than it is going to be at the fretboard. But I'm going to saw all the way down the neck to the fretboard, but not into the fretboard. Cleaning up a little bit there. At one point, I think I moved the neck around and clamped it on the table, and that helped a little bit. But you know, I'm not trying to put too much force into the process, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't hurt the guitar grabbing it and manhandling it, so to speak. But you'll see I'm getting down over an inch into it. Remember, it is 3 3/4 inches all the way. I'll be going down about 3.5, because I won't be going that last 1/4 inch into the fretboard. So at this point, I think I'm getting pretty close to that halfway mark. Getting excited. You can't see it because you don't see my face very often, but I'm getting pretty happy about the way things are going. The tear out has essentially stopped. You know, I put that pad underneath it, not so much to protect the guitar, but to lift the neck, so that the neck would want to be, gravity would want to open that joint. The neck would want to be down, because with it all flat, the neck doesn't want to be down. And move the guitar around a bit. I apologize that you really can't see what I'm doing, but I'm really just still cutting on the neck of the guitar. And just a little bit, when I take that last bit of tape off, things go much more smoothly, because the tape did create some friction, grabbing into the joint, where the blade being very smooth steel, it moved through there really nice. So that last inch or so, once I'd taken the last bit of tape off, went really, really quickly. As I talked about it at the beginning, the guitar has a beautiful sound. I mean, it's not an expensive guitar, probably was never an expensive guitar, but the wood is very thin. It's aged. It's not been humidified terribly well, but I checked the humidity level and it was in the 45% area, which really isn't all that bad. The lacquer is a touch cracked at the top, and that's the last thing I'm going to do to this guitar. It will be to do a little lacquer repair. It's been played a lot. There's scratches, but I think a lot of them, because the lacquer is very thin, a lot of them can be lacquered over and then lightly buffed down to where it'll be somewhat new looking for an old guitar. At times I felt like I was cutting through a 2x4 the way I'm sawing there. It just felt a bit overkill for a guitar neck. But, you know, you got to get the neck cut. I'm going to flip that guitar back around in just a little bit, and you'll see about, you know, where I'm at. See my coffee cup in the foreground. As usual, it's cold. You know, I pour coffee and then I let it get nice and cold before I have an opportunity to drink any of it. Well, I'm going to put the camera back on normal speed now and go back to the original audio as we are getting ready to finish up the work on getting this neck done. I'm down pretty close to the fretboard. If it wasn't for the fact that I know there's no truss rod, I would think there's a truss rod. But there's nothing but a block. So, what have I got? Now, if I were to take and I bend this, I can. I'm going to move that though. Well, that's so close. That is so close. Oh, I know it. I'm hitting the binding. I'm hitting the binding on that side. Not hitting the binding on this side yet. So which means I'm a little bit out of skew, not much. So what we'll do is we'll come over here. We'll be able to see this. Get this in here just like I want it. It might be okay. Now all we're going to do now is make sure I am level across. Get that rag underneath here. That was helping quite a bit. pinned something together. And I am stopped right there, and there, right there, there. But so what you might be able to see, I'll bring this up nice and close, is that I have a gap now on this side, a little tear out there, which I'm going to have to fix, and I have a gap over here with not nearly as much of the scratching. So what I should be able to do, and I'm going to clean this sawdust up before I do anything, is I should be able to clamp this up. Now, what I'm going, as I said I wanted to do, let me take a little piece of metal. Now you'd say, well, why didn't you do this? Because I didn't have any way of really putting this where I wanted it to be. Plus that, and if it's just dust, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. But some of this stuff here has got a little bit of fiber in it, and I might be able to use it. And then what I'm also going to do is I will cut some more. Because what I want to do is I glue that up. I want to stuff any open spot with sawdust. Might have been easier, like I say. Okay, I'm just going to save this if I don't drop it again. We'll take this over here out of the way, this out of the way, and put my handy dandy vacuum on. Always nice in the vacuum cleaners running for the tape, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more enjoyable than listening to a vacuum cleaner. Now, let's get all this tape off. And now that I've cut that gap, the intention would be for me to take a clamp and go from the tail to go from this heel to here. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay. When I did this, I pulled it back, nice and snug. There's a little gap at the top, and I may just fill that with wood putty. This over here is just, it scratched all the lacquer and finish off, so what I'm going to do is I'll have to restain it. I'll probably put a little putty in here, in these areas, and I'll restain them. The heel looks good. This over here is much, much less. So what I'm going to do, because it's really all I can do, pull that out, and I'm going to get a couple of clamps. Now, what I probably should do, and you know, sometimes I don't do all what I should, but what I probably should do is make something that fits across here so that I get good pressure. I think I can do it without that, though. And there's really not much else as far as getting it. I've got a couple big clamps, so I'm not worried about the distance. What I'd like to be able to do is say I'm going to get that wood block, and I might do that. I might take and make a block. That way, when I can set a block on here, and then I can get something flat. So I'll bring you back when I get that done, because I'm certainly not going to have you sit there and watch me whittle, because that's not pretty for me to make those cuts. So we'll be back. And just hang in there with me. Okay, brought you back, and here's what we have. This is just dry fit. I did put some sandpaper down through the slot here to try to make it as smooth as I could. And I've got to set my bar clamp up. And so what I'm going to do now is there's nothing left to do but just to get some tight bond in there as tight as I can, clean up the squeeze out, get it clamped up, and let it sit overnight. So we're going to see how that goes. First thing we're going to do is, of course, take this back off. Just back this out. Back this up. And we'll lay this down. And you notice I had a couple pieces of leather in here. I was going to build a frame, and it just got to be too much work. It just wasn't going to be something I was going to do just to fix this guitar. If I was going to do it a lot and had a lot of these to do, then I'd probably make a jig. But we don't need a jig for one guitar. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take my pipe bond, which I have put in a small container because it just worked out better for me than the original one. And we'll open this up as much as I can. We're going to squeeze in as much as we can squeeze in there. And I'll be wasting it. No, but we're going to let that sit for a second. Let that go in. You know, I get a little finger in there every now and again. I can't help it. I'm like a little kid. Got to have my fingers in there. And I'm going to let that soak in there just for a second while I get a little bit of water so I can do a little cleanup. You know, I never have everything I need when I get started. I always have to run off and get something. So let me go get some water. Water showing up. That little paintbrush has got to show up. I'm going to take this brush right here, which should work pretty well. If I was a better videographer, see, I would just cut and paste all this together and you would never know what I did. But I'm not. I mean, I'm marginally a guitar tech, so you know, I am not even marginally a videographer, and I don't have the equipment. We're using a good old iPad, you know, and that's what it is. So now we're going to get a little bit there. So put that water back over here where I won't get my hands into it too easily. Got a nice spot right here, which hopefully will allow some tight bond to go through. See, I saw that the tight bond was already going completely through, which is a good thing. Yeah, see, it's just going to soak right on down. And I'm giving it a minute to do that because I've got a pretty big hole to fill. So what we'll do is, you know, we'll just kind of paint that in there, just like Jerry Rosa does. And now what I didn't do is just wet the hole, but I think this hole is more than big enough. I'm not too worried about the glue getting down in it. I'm more worried about, the fact that got to get enough glue down in there. The hole's big. Now, we're going to let it, if it runs out the other side, I'm happy because I want it to be full when I start. It'll all squeeze out. That I'm not worried about. I know it will. And let's wipe up some, and then we'll see how much mess I've got coming out the other side. And then we're going to lay it down. Yeah, we'll put a little there. And I'll clean that up a little bit anyway. And yeah. And that's going to run out there. that's going to be just fine. Because what we're going to do is, if it doesn't, I'm going to put a little bit extra right here. I can always clean that up. And I can see it running down in the hole. I'm giving it time to work. And yes, there it is working. Now, here's my pieces of leather. I got a little wooden bar I put across here just for support, because I want to get this in the middle. And I'll put this back here where it kind of balances. There we go. Come on now. There we go. And this is going to go right in here. I got two pieces of leather, which I will push up against the pin. Now, is that looking? It's not the easiest thing to get all put together. Now, let's see. Now, I could put it on the end, but I don't want to do that. I want it to be right. I want it to be right there, and that is exactly where I want it to be. And I want this then to come up here like that. Then I want this to start squeezing in here like that. Now, before it gets too tight, also we'll take a look. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that is sitting. Remove just a touch square. And I don't think I can get it any tighter than that. And get some of the glue off this brush. And we'll start to see it squeezed out all the way up. Yes. Now what that's going to do, that'll also fill the slot. Oh yeah, I got good squeeze out everywhere. And that'll wipe up, and I just now. Up there. It might have been a touch glue, got all the way down. The spot glue right there. Take this off the back side. Put a little water right down there. Oh, I like the way this is looking. Gotta get this any tighter. Oh. That's about it. And that's okay, because I want it leveraged like that. This is just how I think I want it. If it's not how it should be, then I guess I'm just a doofus. I don't know what to say. So we're going to find out, though, and I won't know till tomorrow when the glue is dried and I string it back up, whether this was successful or not, because there's just no way to know right now. You get all this glue off of here. A lot of little cosmetic stuff to do, but I kind of enjoy that, and this is going to be a little bit of fun when I get to explain to people that this neck had been cut off, been sawed off. Now, okay, I like it, I like it, I like it. Good and snug. Good and snug. Snug as a bug. Okay. Well, that's all I can show you right now. So I will bring you back tomorrow when this is dry, and we'll string her up and see just how high the action is at that point. The good news is that the action's actually a little bit low. The saddle's already low, so I can always raise the saddle. So very good. I appreciate all of you hanging in here with me, and we'll see if I've been successful. Thank you. The final edition of my video on fixing the neck angle on this classical guitar. Remember in the long video that I posted recently, I did a neck reset on a classical by sawing the back of the neck off and re-gluing it. I let it sit overnight, and then a couple days have transpired since I put strings back on it and let the strings sit for a bit. And I'm very excited to report that it was a 100% success. Originally, the height of the string at the 12th fret was 10/64, a bit too much even for a classical guitar. And I wanted to get it to 6/64. And so, I think in my video I talked about how I calculated how much had to be cut off the back end and try to make a little bit of a wedge so that when I folded this back over, it would be exactly where it needed to be. I just retuned the guitar right before starting this video and did just remeasure the string height at the 12th fret, and it is 6/64, which is exactly what I wanted it to be. Now, when I first put them on, it was 5/64, so yeah, give or take a half a 64th, 128th. So, even after restringing it, let it sit for a couple days, it essentially hasn't moved. And it is in tune. It looks good. I'm going to do a little work to the front of it. There's some wear into here. There's some scratches through here. I'll bring this up real close, as close as I can. And what you're going to see here is some wood filler I put in. And I haven't smoothed it even, but this is where the scar was, where I cut the slot. And the only part that was more than I anticipated was this little spot right here, this little bit of tear out. But I put wood filler on it, smoothed it out. I'll be able to stain this, and you'll never even know that it was there. On the other side, it's even less, in that there's just a little bit of work there. That's it. So, I'm very happy. The neck appears to be straight. Everything works well. It plays well. For an inexpensive but very good sounding old guitar. I spent about, an actual work about an hour to do that neck reset. So, now, all in all for this guitar, as I think I explained, I had to redo the bridge, and it had come loose. I put a bridge plate underneath it because it had a bit of a belly. Now it does not. It has the tiniest bit, but for a guitar this age and a classical, I don't think that's anything at all to worry about. I had to change out the tuners. Not that there was anything wrong with them, but they didn't fit right. This little ornament up at the top was sticking way up here, and so I had another set of tuners that obviously were better suited for this guitar. They looked exactly the same, so you wouldn't know the difference other than now the little harp ornament is not sitting out of whack. The neck is in real good shape. The frets are in good shape. I just cleaned and polished them a little bit, and I haven't played for quite some time, but you can see I haven't played for a bit, and it's very uncomfortable. I'm not playing in this position I should be in, but it plays very nicely. I'm really excited about that, because what I took was a guitar that really wasn't usable, wasn't playable. The bridge had come off. There was a big belly in the back. The strings were way too high. And, with a couple of hours worth of work, now I've turned it into a guitar that maybe somebody would like to have. And I'll probably put this online once I really redo the top. I'd like to go ahead and make it a little prettier. And if anybody doesn't remember, this is a Yamaha G60A. It's by Nippon Gakki Company Limited in Japan. That's what it says on the inside. It does not have a serial number. Probably it may have one on a deck block somewhere. I did not look for one, and because I don't know that it'd make any difference if we found it. So with that, I do appreciate everybody paying attention to watching the videos and tuning in. If you have a guitar that needs work, don't hesitate to call a guitar doctor. That's me. Guitar Doctor Texas is my Facebook page, for those of you who may not have found it directly. And, I'd be happy to do anything from a minor reset to some major repair. Maybe I can cut the neck off your classical guitar. Also, till the next video, it's been fun. I appreciate everything that your comments that you do, the fact that you watch, and keep on playing. Thanks a lot.